Hello, Car MBS. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a delight to be here with you at this beautiful environment for the 60th commemorative and celebratory event for the Management Briefing Seminars. My name is Bill Newman. I'm Industry Executive Advisor with SAP's Automotive Practice. And together with our partners at KPMG, we're delighted to be your host and sponsor for today's Power Lunch. I want to just take a few moments to thank our friends at the Center of Automotive Research. I kind of had to go back and discover that we've been doing a Power Lunch here for about 6 years now. The pandemic years were a little interesting, a lot of virtual stuff. But we've been delighted to be affiliate members for some time, and we have found it to be a worthwhile investment for our global practice because we both cater to you, our mutual customers. And so for that, we thank you for being here. And we're delighted to be a part of this event and also to welcome Elizabeth to this CAR family. So we're delighted to be here. What I'd like to do is introduce our panelists for today's Power Lunch. And with that, technology. There we go. And with that, we're excited to bring you our expert panel today. So first up, I'd like to introduce Andrea Hopfier from SAP. She's an AI business process architect specializing in digital transformation for the automotive supply chain. With over a decade of experience, Andrea has led strategic initiatives that integrate AI supply chain planning solutions and advanced analytics to optimize manufacturing and logistics operations for global OEMs and suppliers. Please welcome to the stage, Andrea. Next up, I'd like to introduce Hernan de la Torre from KPMG. Hernan is a senior executive with over 2 decades of experience driving strategic transformation through supply chain innovation, AI integration, and technology-enabled business solutions. As a principal at KPMG, Hernan leverages deep expertise in SAP and Agentic AI to transform traditional supply chains into intelligent, responsive networks, dramatically enhancing visibility, responsiveness, and sustainability. Please welcome Hernan. Test 1, 2, there we go. All right, super. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon. So again, thanks to everybody for joining our panel lunch. You know, we were joking ahead of time, we've got about 45 to 50 minutes to demystify AI, so we're gonna do our best. And I think it's safe to say that, you know, a lot of it's the hype, so we're gonna try to get real with you as much as we can during the time that we have together. Really try to leverage our understanding of what AI is, where it is, and how companies today are creating competitive advantages around their business operations. So thanks to our panel for joining us today and for your time to join us for our session. So let's go ahead and dive in. So to set context, I think most of us are familiar with the personal use of AI, ranging from ChatGPT as a prompt interface to access vast sources of public data, and taking this simple AI to what is known as large language models, LLMs, and eventually generative AI, Gen AI. Finally, to the promise of what we view as really exciting as unprompted agentic AI. It's definitely not a linear process. And I think that at SAP, we call out our ethics guidelines for AI, whereby we join other organizations on key guiding principles governing the advance of AI technologies, things like safety, security, fairness and non-discrimination, sustainability, transparency, human oversight, and privacy. They're all critical elements. So Andrea, let's go to you first. How would you break down the advances in AI technology over the past year? And generally, how do you see customers responding with their approaches to AI?
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Bill, and thank you everybody for having us here. It's a great pleasure. So, one of the things to answer your question about how I've personally seen advances of AI across the company and across our customers is one, we've seen it in going through in our everyday personal lives. Everything, as you mentioned, from ChatGPT to Siri to Alexa, right? But now it's how do we bring that into the workplace? And so that's really kind of where I've seen a lot of customers go in and really try and understand, okay, where can I infuse artificial intelligence into my business process to make it that much more simpler, that much more quicker, accurate, more agile. Additionally, I've also seen our large language models cater to more industry-based. So for the automotive industry, it's much more of a domain-specific large language model versus more of that generalistic based LLM. Additionally, I've also seen from a corporate strategy perspective, we're going in and and companies are being and influencing and putting in place specific AI strategic leadership, whether it's from center of excellence groups to AI architects, or even partnering with software companies or universities, or even large corporations, to where they can go in and expand and really identify key learnings, again, so they can be faster, stronger, and much more agile.
Excellent. Hernan, with the growing use of AI tools, governance comes to mind. I know I've sat in steering committee meetings with business leaders and listened as everyone has their own pet projects of AI across different platforms in different parts of the organization. So is governance playing, in your mind, a greater role, or is it still the Wild West? And what may be the upside and downfall of different AI strategies and approaches?
Sure. Thank you, Bill, and thanks for having us today. The issue of governance is certainly something that it's bubbling up as one of the key differentiators. And we're starting this conversation really at the top. You know, how do you think about AI not as a collection of small projects? And certainly a lot of organizations begin, as you said, Bill, begin on trying to come up with proof of concepts and try to demystify AI. And while that is important, I think that the governance piece is critical. You know, we talked about decision rights, for example. Who's the owner of that AI decision? Who's involved in AI initiatives? A second element about this governance is having a process and value insights governance. So what's the problem that we're trying to solve, right? And what is the value that you're going to get from AI? And this vision of leading with a business problem is very important, and that has to go directly into that governance model. And the third element of this governance is how do we maintain it? A lot of our clients, what we're seeing is they put a lot of effort on getting the basic technology, you know, engage their teams, get mobilized, and it fades away. You know, because maybe the value, how it was supposed to be captured, the KPIs were not there, or simply because it was more of a check in the box. So again, the governance is so important to maintain that momentum, but also to create the guardrails that you described earlier, right? How do we build trusted AI? How do we keep human in the loop, right? Or human embedded? How do we make this about a business problem that we're trying to solve and not a technology plug-in?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that just because you're introducing a new technology doesn't mean that you automatically improve your governance or business decision making or even your process, right? We've seen this with previous technology adoption waves for sure. Earlier this year, KPMG published its study, the Agentic AI Advantage, Unlocking the Next Level of AI Value, where it states that agents aren't just the next wave of AI, they are a step change. The study estimates that $3 trillion US dollars will be unlocked in corporate productivity annually, and quotes another study from IDC that over the next 10 years, generative AI alone will add a whopping nearly $10 trillion to the global GDP. So Hernan, based on your work with a variety of automotive clients, what approaches do you find automotive customers adopting, and what are some of the best practices to move to agentic AI, maybe from a technology sequence perspective, because we just talked about governance, which obviously is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you see those numbers, right? $3 trillion on investment. Those are massive. And
Big.
yeah, and then when you talk to many companies, I've had conversations where they say, "Oh yeah, we just installed Copilot, and we're going to get started." And that's totally appropriate and fine, right? You got to start somewhere. But what is interesting about the technology is that the influence of AI is propagating. So it's not, that massive amount of those large figures on ChatGPT or Copilot, right? It's really how do you think about using AI not only for the back office, but embedding those in your products in the vehicle, and how do you solve issues? I think I would say three key approaches or leading practices is, I mentioned a little bit about anchoring on a business problem. So it's starting with one of the offices, right? If this is a CFO initiative or a CEO from a supply chain perspective, choose an area where you want to begin developing this concepts. And so come up with that vision, right? What is the vision that you're trying to accomplish at the top? And then start diving into those specific initiatives. The second real good way of thinking about it is design for orchestration. And what that means is, yes, we're solving through, we're building use cases with AI, thinking about agentic AI and using agents, but bring this in the context of what if I have other agents that can solve the next problem? So that architecture around designing to orchestrate full processes will take you in a path that it's more scalable. And yes, you can have early wins, but the idea is to continue adding more into that footprint. And the third piece is to really build trust. The issue of trust is very, very important. This is a true fact. I was at a supply chain executive event, and I asked the question, "Who's the biggest enemy of AI?" And unanimously, everyone said, "Is internal controls," or lawyers. I've heard both of them. And the reality is that there's portions of the business that will have to enforce and validate and verify that the technology is used in the right way. And building that trust has to be done with some of those small cases, and then scaling to build that confidence that yes, this technology is scalable, that yes, that the use case is delivering value, and from there scale. If you skip the trust portion, it will be a bumpy road for sure.
For sure. Let's dive a little deeper into that. So, Andrea, unprompted agentic AI has shown promise with some various use cases within automotive customers. Yet a recent MIT study found that 95% of in-house AI projects fail to deliver expected results. So from your side, what are some of the early approaches you've seen customers embrace as it relates to ERP and non-ERP data and the use cases of AI, and what I'll call kind of basic blocking and tackling and some of the things that we've covered today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I read that article, and of those use cases that were selected, all of them were very poorly crafted and were very poorly executed. And the reason why is because they selected use cases that didn't have a whole lot of return on investment to begin with. So that's also what we're seeing across clients, is that these use cases that they're selecting are very much more not really moving the needle in a strategic direction one way or another to their bottom line. So how I see this and how I've positioned this to our clients is really think about it as bookends. So we have, on one side, we have more of your utility-based type of AI use cases and challenges where customers are suffering, or employees or end users are suffering day in and day out with specific use cases. And they want to be able to go in and have a fix to this, right? It may not necessarily move the needle to their bottom line, but at the same time, they want to be able to resolve this quicker and faster so they can get on with more strategic initiatives within their day-to-day roles. And so from there, we see actually use case in that, and we're actually leveraging a program called AI in a Day. Now, I listened to some of our other colleagues earlier sessions that they've developed use cases in 6 days. We're actually developing them in an 8-hour workday. And this is true because we have the way that we've built out these large language models and the codes and everything else, you don't need to have thousands of lines of code to build a use case. And so we have predefined specific use cases. Say, for example, non-EDI documents to be able to transact and upload for a sales order. That can be done in 8 hours. It's crazy. It's unbelievable, but we're doing it. And then the other end of the spectrum is you have these much more what we call high-value AI use cases where they do move the needle to your bottom line. They do impact your strategic initiative. And so this is where we also have those AI use cases take a little bit more time, but we are enabling proof of concepts through to be able to help work with our clients to adapt and infuse artificial intelligence, and not just one type of AI capability, but multiple types of AI capabilities, whether it's image recognition or anomaly detection, all into one use case. And so ultimately, that's really kind of the other side of the bookend. And then in the middle, you have other use cases, right? And these are the use cases where we find really are the questionable ones. And this is the ones where we think a lot of our customers are ultimately the safe zone of their picking, and they're selecting these, but they don't necessarily have a whole lot of return on investment. And so that's where, back to your point, Bill, a lot of these use cases are failing and these projects are failing because they're selecting use cases and projects that don't really have a high impact to your organization. So ultimately, this is where we have, again, some of those use cases that are more on, we'll call them utility type use cases, but then we have the high value AI use cases. Think of like prediction models and things like that. And then another one that we've also done is where we've gone in and think of at the dealership level and customer service experience, where they want to be notified of, hey, let me recommend some specific maintenance issues that might be going on with your vehicle, your specific model or make, or things like that, right? So we're actually working also at the dealership level as well as the OEMs, tier ones, tier twos. So a lot of potential there.
Yeah, across all sectors of the industry. This month, KPMG released its results of the 25th Global Automotive Executive Survey. As one of the compelling trends of the report described as mastering technology, it states, technology and AI are no longer differentiators, they are prerequisites. Companies that risk taking control of their digital infrastructure risk falling behind. Today, it is the foundation of differentiation, reliability, and performance, but control matters. Without clear ownership, back to your point, Hernan, cultural alignment and robust governance, tech becomes a liability instead of a competitive advantage. So, Hernan, can you unpack that a little bit? We've definitely seen specific investments in technology and AI in key areas of the business, and to the point I think we've been driving to today, some of the investments are showing early signs of value. From your side, what specific investments do your clients find more value driven than others, and how are they progressing?
Yeah, and it's a very interesting quote that AI is no longer a differentiator, is the new way of business, and if it's, and we will talk in a bit about how it may evolve, but in current time, some of the areas that we see tremendous value is, and Andrew alluded to this a bit, is where you have data-intensive processes that are, somewhat repeatable, or you need to derive additional insights. So, for example, on the building supply chain resilience, for example, right? Whether it's from planning or doing multi-variable models, and that you start integrating different sources that in the past wouldn't been thought as automatically integrated. So, for example, the issue of tariffs, right? Can we model planning when there is disruption from tariffs or other factors in that I can bring those signals to? The second piece is smart manufacturing. So a lot of organizations using AI to help model and builds different scenarios of assembly lines, and coming up with different ways to accelerate their manufacturing design without the huge cost that involves trying new things or switching production lines. And the third one I will say is customer and dealer insights. So how do you move from make to stock to make to profit? So thinking about how is my demand going to impact my bottom line, and not just thinking about supply chain as an isolated event in terms of that forecast.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the technologies have definitely evolved. We've heard of scenario planning earlier today, less reliance on spreadsheets since pandemic times. Andrea, where do you see the future of AI heading in the next 2 years and perhaps in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so also a great question. So where I see in the next 2 years is, we're going into this direction of actually embedding artificial intelligence within our business processes, within our, not just from a technology standpoint, but within everything that we do, with the way that we think about things. I also believe that organizations are gonna input and infuse artificial intelligence in their strategic operations as well. So this is where I ultimately believe that some of the areas where AI is really going to make a difference in 2 years, but then in the long term, from a 5-year trajectory, I believe that artificial intelligence is ultimately going to be fully autonomous. I really do. I really think that we're gonna go to that degree. There will still be points of, as we call it, human in the loop, right, to make sure that there are those validation checks. But since we have so much training over the next couple of years happening, a lot of those validation checks will start to get smaller and smaller and smaller as the human actually builds confidence in the actual system itself.
Hernan, same question for you. Where do you see the future of AI in the next 2 years, next 5 years?
2 and 5. I think the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot of wrestling in the business, thinking about what are my scenarios, where can I take AI, but also bringing in that layer of trust and regulation. So, as you all know, there's tons of new news currently released by the administration. So there's not necessarily a rigid stack of legal compliance yet, but over time those may increase, especially because it's being pushed at the state level. So it's pretty much like taxes right now. Every state will come up with their own rules, and so having those insights of what I need to take into account to build that trust. So definitely we're going to that agentic AI model in the next couple of years. And then I think 5 years out is probably, it's going to be about that convergence, right? Where we have the vehicle AI and the enterprise AI connected. So there's a lot of that connectivity, and there will be a lot of processes and organizations that will have touchless fill in the blank. One of my clients has implemented a touchless procurement, which is based on AI, and it's quite impressive. Now, it's not for every single scenario, but there's some of these use cases in 5 years you will see is full processes being orchestrated through the new technology.
We're going to try to quickly get into some Q&A. We're getting pushed on time here. So maybe, Hernan, you could just give us a snapshot. Let you finish your water first. Give us a quick snapshot of the regulatory environment looking ahead, and we'll try to get another question or two in.
Yeah, for sure. The regulatory piece is interesting, and we see Europe to be, a little bit farther along the journey with Europe regulations on AI, and our regulations will be more around data. How do we make sure that there's control on cyber risk? I had a conversation with the COO of a consumer pharma company and asked, what's your biggest concern? And it's not so much the technology or the supply chain, it was cyber risk. And so understanding that AI can be used for the right reasons and sometimes the wrong. So I would say that that's something that is going to start evolving more and more, but I believe we shouldn't wait for that to happen and to be told what is the regulation. I think we need to bring that governance that we spoke earlier and start thinking about how do we build that trust, how do we build that governance and oversight and measures so it's successful as you go on your journey.
Andrea, I'll give you one from the audience here. How can AI be integrated into workforce operations at the frontline levels? You have 60 seconds.
Ooh. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways how I see it, and I actually just mentioned one, so it just depends what the question is referring to as far as frontline. So it could be from a customer service level at the dealership point of view, right? So being able to make not only the relationship between the dealership and the end consumer that much more better and that much more stronger based on understanding, hey, what have they purchased in the past, understanding what specific packages they like, or understanding, hey, what specific colors sell well at my specific dealership, so that way I can replenish on those specific packages and colors accurately, but also from a maintenance perspective too, right? So being able to be in tune with the end consumer to say, hey, you know what, we recommend going in for an oil change or whatever, right, at this particular time. So being that much closer to the end consumer and provide various recommendations. So there's one way, and then also from the second aspect, from the front lines, as part of, like, say, a supply chain manufacturing aspect, right? So is really making sure that you have the right equipment, right assets, things like that, spare parts on the front lines in the tool cribs at the right time. So being able to have more of a predictive metrics in there, I think is absolutely critical.
Excellent. We apologize that we won't be able to take too many other questions from the chat, but thank you very much for submitting. Just a few things before as we wrap up. We are very active here in the Detroit area. We have our SAP Innovation Day for Automotive. Actually, this week we're sold out. However, we would love to invite members of our user group and non-members of our user group to join us at the David Whitney Hotel on Friday the 19th. Andrea here is going to go a little deeper into AI and everything you were afraid to ask. But so for those of you who are planning, or you're local and you're planning to stay around, please feel free to join us. Registration is still available. And then also we do have the research and assets we mentioned during our presentation today. These will be available in your proceedings. And with that, we want to thank everyone for your time today. Really appreciate it. Hope we've at least moved the needle in demystifying AI and 42 minutes that we had. So again, thank you for your attention and have a great program this week.